Hi everyone. It took me several takes to get this right. I tried to do this over several lives because I wanted to talk about this situation with Danielle Johnson, aka Daniel Ayoka, who was an astrologer on Twitter and a healer. Unfortunately, she, on the 8th of April, just before the eclipse, she had stabbed her boyfriend, and she had thrown both her children out of a moving car before crashing a car and ending her life. The 9-year-old child is still alive. I believe her daughter is still alive. My condolences to that precious girl. But the 8-month-old has passed away, along with Danielle herself and the man that she supposedly killed. Now, I'm going to upload this onto YouTube, so if you want any information about this particular incident, please go onto the article. The article will be linked in the description of IG, and it will also be linked in on YouTube. The video will be linked in IG until my reading for the first quarter moon in Purnavasu, okay? So there are a lot of things that I want to talk about with regards to this situation, and it's not going to be the kind of things that you think. First of all, what has to be acknowledged is that there are so many things for me to cover here. But there are several things that I need to get, it's my truth. I'm getting my truth out about this because I feel like a lot of what I'm about to bring up is going to be very important now. So the first thing I want to bring up, the first thing I want to mention in particular is the eclipse. Now, I spoke about the eclipse during Revati, the Revati reading, and I mentioned that the astrological placements themselves, it would be kind of chaotic, but it wouldn't be as dramatic as all that. If there were any dramatic events happening in the world because of the eclipse, it would be brought about by something else. Now, before I go into what that something else is, I want to talk about the Sun, Moon, and Rahu all being in Revati at the time of the eclipse. Now, as you guys know, Rahu is associated with the solar eclipse already, and it's associated with the destiny of the collective destiny of humanity at that time. So Rahu is basically the end destination. It is where we find ourselves arriving, not necessarily at the end of our lives, but when we are enlightened enough to lead our lives properly. This is where we usually end up, in our Rahu space. The problem is, though, is that if you look at Claire Narti's video with regards to Rahu, you will know that gravitating towards your Rahu, which a lot of people were inclined to do during the eclipse, gravitating towards your Rahu immediately and immediately chasing after Rahu's aspirations can lead to a lot of problematic behavior. And unfortunately, with the sun and moon both in Revati, conjunct with the solar eclipse, conjunct with Rahu being in Revati as well, it had all the effects of a full supermoon rather than a new supermoon. It had all the effects of a full moon rather than a new moon. So people were gravitating towards energies that they shouldn't have been gravitating towards. They were gravitating towards spirituality and all of these things, when, if I'm being really honest with you, gravitating towards spirituality immediately without channeling our daily lives and our day-to-day into that spirituality, gravitating towards that spirituality immediately, it would lead to us believing in a lot of illusions that aren't true. It would lead to us taking spiritual knowledge to a very, very dangerous place if we weren't careful. So it would have already led to that. It's just that I don't think it would have been as dramatic as the case of Danielle Johnson without any outside help. I don't believe it would have been that dramatic if it wasn't for other influences at play as well. But I did say that for the sun, moon, and Rahu in Revati, we needed to come back to Hasta. We needed to come back to doing things with our hands. Now was not the time for overanalyzing things. Now was not the time for spirituality. Now was not the time for any of that stuff. Now was the time to create, to form things, to express ourselves, like physically, like to physically be involved in things rather than contemplating life too much. Because when you contemplate life too much, when you're too much in your mind, it can really start to affect your mental health. At the same time, whilst I say that, again, I did say to you guys during the reading for Revati that there would be other influences at play here. This is not just about astrology. This is not about astrology. This is about behavioral control. Now, with regards to human beings' fears around the eclipse, first of all, we have to understand that fears around the eclipse are literally thousands of years old. Fears surrounding it. Because when our ancestors first got glimpses of the eclipse, they didn't know what they were looking at. They didn't know what was going on. All they knew is that there was this big black sun in the sky that was suddenly causing everything to go haywire in their minds anyway. Well, it was like dark in the middle of the day. Like, what the fuck is going on here? If you go to Jasmine's Garden on TikTok, she explains this beautifully. Like, you're dealing with people who did not know the scientific explanations as to why there was an eclipse and why the eclipse caused problems with people's eyesight, why it caused things to go dark in the middle of the day. Like, of course it would be seen as a negative omen because they didn't know what the fuck was going on and why it was up there. So it's thousands of years of superstition around the eclipse. And granted, yes, an eclipse can herald, changes that need to be made or changes that we need to embrace. Yes, it can herald that. But you're talking about thousands of years of superstition that have come to fruition in the form of many people thinking that it's apocalyptic. Okay? So there's that. It's not like this whole eclipse thing just sprung up out of nowhere. It's not like it sprung up out of nowhere. It's like thousands of years of superstition at the same time. Like I said before, it is not just an astrological phenomenon that caused this incident or caused any incidents like this. Knowing human superstition, how long it's lasted, there had to be a little bit of an extra push to make sure that there were dangerous events connected to the eclipse or belief in the eclipse. And all of that is strategically done for a reason. Okay? Now, I did warn about the dangers of following spirituality because of the cosmic alignment alone. But again, like I've been repeating throughout this entire video so far, it's not just about astrology. There's also behavioral control around the eclipse, like I said before. Now, for those who are unaware, I identify as a targeted individual. Okay? Long story short, it involves certain fringe members of society being subjected to unlawful experimentation into various forms of weaponry, which can range from directed energy weapons to psychotronic weapons. All of it is engineered towards behavioral control. So I'm one of those people who identifies as a TI because I have been subjected to directed energy weaponry and, directed energy weapon attacks. I've been subjected to community stalking. The community stalking is there to actually facilitate the electronic weaponry and the psychotronic weapons and the directed energy weapons. So the community stalking is there to facilitate that, and it is also there to ensure mental health are on standby so that you can be diagnosed as paranoid schizophrenic. And the function that that serves is to diminish your evidence lawfully. Because if you are diagnosed as paranoid schizophrenic, it can actually affect your admissibility in court. It might not affect it dramatically, but it can affect your admissibility in court in a number of ways. Because if you're seen as paranoid schizophrenic, then when you are abused, and even if you are proven to be correct about the abuse that you've gone through, if your mental health is called into question, it can impair your believability when it comes to testimonies against people who have abused you. So that's why the community stalking is in place. It is to drive you towards seemingly erratic behavior that not only leads everybody around you to think that you're crazy, it's also to facilitate the electronic weaponry. Because the electronic weaponry, it needs a light signature, it needs a heat signature, and it needs your brain frequencies. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. It needs an energetic signature from you, and it needs your brain frequencies in order to ascertain optimal energetic output that will allow greater efficiency of the electronic weapons to be used against you. Like, for example, if I'm stressed out, then my frequency will be more dense. If my frequency is more dense, that means I'm actually more visible, and I'm actually putting out more energy for the directed energy weapons, or the satellite facilitating the directed energy weapons, to find me. That's why they need me to be stressed out. That's why they need me to be het up and acting a fool and all the rest of it. It's not just so the community can turn around and say that I'm crazy. It's so that it can actually facilitate the unlawful torture. And it's happening to a small group of people globally. Okay? So that's why they need to get you upset, and that's why they need you to behave erratically. It performs a multifaceted function of making you look crazy, affecting your evidence in court, and facilitating the torture against your body and your brain. And speaking of psychotronic weapons, if you search psychotronic weapons online, the first link that you will see is from the CIA talking about the KGB having dupes, psychotronic weapon dupes. Okay, so these weapons exist. This is not just a conspiracy theory. These weapons exist, and truth be told, in order for these defense systems to have properly working directed energy weaponry and psychotronic weaponry, they need to actually experiment on the public. Okay? They need to experiment on the public. Which leads me to my second point. Danielle Johnson had a boyfriend who was a Marine. I think he was a veteran. I don't know if he was active. I don't know if he was active in the Marines. I hadn't looked that far. But he was in the Marines. Now, from my personal experience, anything involving a military family or a military couple, weird shit is not going to be far behind. Okay? Wherever there are military personnel, DEWs and acoustic weaponry and psychotronic weaponry are not going to be far behind. This was planned. And a lot of these weapons can be used against personnel for false flags. This is the truth. And I'm sorry to say it, and I know it sounds incredibly disrespectful, given that this incident happened on the 8th, it is now the 12th. But psychotronic weapons can have an effect on people's behavior. In fact, that's the point of psychotronic weapons. Wherever there are military personnel, active or non-active, please be aware that weird shit is not going to be far behind. Now, given that this poor gentleman who was active or a vet of the Marines, given that this poor gentleman was killed, I'm erring on the side of he did not set up his girlfriend. I'm erring on that side, although we don't know everything yet. I'm erring on the side of either he was a pawn, and he was there to honey trap that woman or set up that woman and it didn't work out. Either it was that, or truth be told, I'm more inclined to believe that he did not know what was going on. Because a lot of people on the lower levels don't. I'm inclined to believe that this Marine did not know what his government were doing to his girlfriend and his family. I'm likely to err on the side of that. I believe he had no idea what was going on. That's what I believe. I believe he didn't know. But from my experience, from what I've observed, right, wherever there is military, anything to do with military, weird shit will not be far behind. Anything to do with satellites, anything to do with engineering, anything to do with space, military, anything like that, weird shit is not going to be far behind. Either there are going to be military personnel directly involved in facilitating the use of these weapons, or the weapons are going to be used around them. But where the army, where the marine, like anything like that, weird shit is not far behind. That's the second point. The third point I'm going to come back to is astrology. Now, the article that I read, the LA Times, what they were attempting to do, they were attempting to group all fringe ideals together. So paranoid schizophrenia, among the definitions, one of them is having delusions that the rest of the world don't share. So they're getting increasingly broad with the definition of paranoid schizophrenia and psychosis. They're getting real broad with it. And you know, this is why I'm kind of very cynical about the way the LA Times wrote this and about the way Danielle Johnson's case is being framed. It's because we're at a time now where there's a great awakening going on. The so-called cunty period of, you know, astrology, believing in astrology, and, you know, having greater rights for women and greater rights for queer people. All these things are kind of grouped together. And what's happening is that now the hard work is starting to happen. Now the hard work is beginning. And before the hard work can begin, before these things can have any real power or any real impact on the world, now they're heading towards being demonized. So that's the third thing. The third thing is that this case is being used to demonize astrology, demonize the truth being told about government corruption and governments genociding their own people. Because, you know, Daniel Ayoka was anti-Semitic on top of that. So this is an opportunity to demonize astrology and tarot, to demonize the truth being told about government corruption, grouping these things together so that they can form fringe theories that can have somebody classified as paranoid schizophrenic or psychotic. Should they be seen to be believing in these things? Do you understand what I'm saying? Because now we're heading towards a society that is more Christian, more white, male-centered. So that's the direction that society is moving towards. But in order for that to become a reality, they have to demonize any fringe belief systems that could threaten that power. So that's why tarot and astrology is being demonized through this case. That's why conspiracy theories are being demonized through this case, and conspiracy theories are constantly attached to anti-Semitism, unfortunately, because of the alt-right's infiltration of the truth and movement. That's why truth-seeking and conspiracy theories are now attached to anti-Semitism, because those fucks have been all over it. So it's an attempt to actually cover up the truth about what's going on with regards to how the public is being manipulated and weaponized, you know, being manipulated and genocided, essentially. Is to cover up the truth about that through using this mother and, you know, this tragedy surrounding her children and her partner. So they're basically using that to demonize metaphysics and to demonize telling the truth about governmental corruption and what the government have actually been doing to their own people. All of this has a function. All of this has a function, and its function is to basically lead people into their own slaughterhouse. But I'm not explaining it very well. But it's, Yeah, that's essentially what's being done. That's the third thing that I wanted to point out. It's the end of an era and the beginning of a new one. It's the beginning of the era of homogenized society, and in order to do that, they have to demonize the fringes now. Now that the fringes are on the cusp of having real power, that's when all the bullshit is starting. And the thing about cases like Danielle's, right, is that cases like Danielle's are actually very rare. Now, I've studied journalism and I know how journalism works. They operate based on telling stories that are rare, okay? In journalism, it's not about the dog biting the man, because dog biting man is incredibly common, as opposed to men biting the dog. The case of Danielle Johnson, using the eclipse as just, you know, that this thing about Danielle Johnson being said to kill her family because of the eclipse, because investigators believe that. This is basically akin to men biting a dog. 9 times out of 10, tarot and astrology readers ain't out here killing people based on the eclipse. In fact, I've seen quite a few TikTok astrologers basically saying, you know what, calm the fuck down a little. It's not that serious when it comes to the eclipse. I've seen quite a few of them saying, you know what, the eclipse is nothing to worry about. People are just being dramatic about it, and they were right. Because the eclipse in and of itself should not have caused so many dramatic things happening, like 20 people proposing under the eclipse. And it should not have caused this Danielle Johnson situation. It shouldn't have caused any of that. But again, it needed a little push. So the third thing is, this is all, this man bites dog situation. What the news does is it takes a rare situation and acts like it's a common situation, because they know that if they put this story out there, it's unethical. They know if they put this story out there, knowing that it's rare, knowing that it rarely happens, when they put this story out there, they know that people are going to jump on it and start saying that this is a common thing among astrologers, among Reiki healers, among anybody practicing metaphysics. They're also going to believe that this is common behavior with anybody that understands something about psychotronic weapons being used on the public and directed energy weapons being used on the public. So that is exactly what they're going to do. They know the public are going to take this very rare story and treat it like it's a common story. Because again, our brains, when we have constant exposure to something, our brains cannot tell the difference between, we can tell the difference consciously, but our subconscious brains cannot tell the difference between whether something is rare or common. If we're seeing constant news stories about something, our subconscious brain doesn't know the difference. It doesn't know the difference between whether something is common or rare. It just knows what it's seeing. And the journalists that are writing these stories, they know that. The media that puts these stories out, they know that. They put these stories out same way, knowing that the public is going to subconsciously conflate rarity with commonality, with common behavior. Cases like Danielle Johnson's is rare. An astrologer influencer that talks about eclipse prophecies, then goes and kills their family, that's a rare thing to happen. But they know people are going to turn around and say, you see, that's what you get when you practice tarot and astrology. You let the devil in your house. I'm like, that's what happens. And then on top of that, because this woman was a mother, we already have like astrology and tarot being demonized among the incel crowd as being too feminine. So now they're going to attach it to femininity and to, feminine hormones or whatever the fuck they do. They like to pick up one book by Richard Dawkins and then suddenly act like they know everything about science. Like, fuck off. But these are the kind of people that demonize astrology, because astrology is seen as inherently feminine, and anything inherently feminine is seen as anti-scientific and illogical. when really all astrology is cause and effect. That's it. If the moon can control the behavior of tidal waves on this planet, then why wouldn't it control the water in our bodies? It doesn't make any fucking sense. Okay? But this is propaganda. This rare occasion is going to be used as propaganda, and people are going to eat that shit up every single time. So once again, we have a situation where 2 innocent children are laid upon the altar of, are used as sacrificial lambs to bigotry and to behavioral and social control. Okay, so that's a really unfortunate situation, and I hate it for everybody. Now, the fourth thing that I want to go into is the whole spiritual activation thing, the whole DNA activation thing. Now, I've told you guys before, I've said it before on my social media, that DNA activation, this whole idea that the ringing of your ears or the burning of your skin is supposed to mean that you're activating spiritually. You're spiritually activating, right? You know that meme that's been shared for years about this alien doctor looking at a human and saying, are your ears ringing or is your skin burning? All that type of shit. Are you getting headaches? Well, that just means you're spiritually ascending. Bull fucking shit. So that's one piece of propaganda that was being spread around out there. Okay? When your ears are ringing and your skin is burning or your head is hurting, those are electronic weapons. People call that Havana syndrome now. Those are electronic weapons being used on your body. Those are harmful frequencies being used on your body. Those are EMFs being used on your body. They have nothing to do with ascension. Okay, that has nothing to do with ascension. All of that is electronic weapons being used on your body and you being tortured with it. That's what's causing your headaches. That's what's causing the ringing in your ears. And then on top of that, we have to consider how much radiation, how much output our smart technology is putting out. Like, I could spend 2 minutes on that laptop or 2 minutes on this phone, and it could have my brain out of whack for 2 hours. Imagine how much of this technology we actually use every day and how much brain damage that's actually causing. Do you understand what I'm saying? So this whole thing about the ear ringing and the headaches being attributed to DNA activation, that's not what spiritual, baby, that is not what an increase in your frequency feels like. That's not what it feels like. When you eat healthy food, for example, when you eat fruits and vegetables, for example, or you drink water, if you purify your system in any way, please, like vegans, let me know. If there are any vegans watching this video, let me know. Do you get ringing in your ears and headaches when you eat vegetables and fruit? Do you get ringing in your ears and headaches when you meditate? Do you get ringing in your ears and headaches when you have an orgasm? No? Then why the fuck would you get it if you were truly spiritually ascending? That doesn't make any fucking sense. You're being attacked. You're being targeted. They have fusion centers for this shit. You're being attacked. That's exactly what's going on. It's got nothing to do with you spiritually ascending. And when it comes to this case with Danielle Johnson, like I said before, and her kids and her partner, like I said before, anywhere there's military personnel, shit like this is not far behind. Because these are billion-dollar weapons. They need people to experiment on with this shit. And New Age is such a perfect cover for this. It's such a perfect cover because astrology has long been assumed to be not a real science, when really all astrology is cause and effect. Astrology has long been believed to be not a real science. And then on top of that, you've got so many lies being told about government involvement in all of our lives and how our governments are, you've got so many lies being told about how our government is helping us when they're not. Do you understand what I'm saying? And, these bigger corporations like BlackRock and Vanguard, they're behind all that shit. But like I said, there's certain, I originally posted that there were certain things that this world is not ready for. Like, there are so many different nasty things that our government has been doing to us that they're trying to conceal. And it's working because the rest of you believe it's just the ramblings of mental people. But the truth of the matter is, even if these people are mental illness alone doesn't disprove that the government are up to some nasty shit. Never has, never will. Look at Martha Mitchell. Martha Mitchell was a drunk and was diagnosed with all kinds of shit. Turned out she was right about all the corruption going on around Watergate. So being mentally ill, it proves nothing. It doesn't disprove anything. It doesn't prove or disprove anything. It's just mental illness. That's all it is. Even when somebody has it. So let me get into the fifth thing now. I'm still on the fourth thing. The spiritual activation DNA thing with your ears ringing and the headaches, Havana syndrome. It's got nothing to do with you being elevated spiritually. And we're still on the fourth thing because I've got notes on how the brain actually works. Now, if you look at the Bible, they talk extensively about the golden crown and the silver thread. The golden crown is the brain and the skull, and the silver thread is the spine and the spinal cord. So for hundreds, well, maybe even thousands of years, there's been this fascination with controlling human behavior through controlling the brain and the nervous system. Okay, it's acupuncture. Acupuncture pinpoints certain nerves in the body to connect to different organs in the body. Like, there's always been this fascination with the brain and the nervous system. And with regards to this situation with Danielle Johnson, all the stuff that I talked about with psychotronic weapons, all of that is to do with the manipulation of the brain and the nervous system. And the whole point of slow kill torture is to kill you through your brain and your nervous system, because the people doing this know that the public don't take that shit seriously. We don't take what we do to one another's nerves and brains seriously. We can actually kill each other just by that alone, and we wouldn't care because we don't take it seriously. Okay? But this is why you need to be concerned about the brain and concerned about how your behavior is being influenced by these weapons. This is why you need to be concerned, because different sections of the brain induce hormones and neurotransmitters to different body parts. So this is basic science, and they produce all kinds of moods and behaviors. Now, the vibrational frequency flowing through the brain is there's basically an output through vibrational frequency. So whatever our moods and behaviors are, our brain emits a frequency expressing that emotion. So if I'm angry, my brain will emit a certain frequency to let people know, hey, I'm angry. If I'm happy, then my brain will emit a certain frequency to let people know, hey, I'm happy, right? And what can happen is that what psychotronic weapons are able to do is they're able to tune into the brain's frequency. Usually it's a van sitting outside somebody's home, sending like a thermal beam to somebody's home. And through that, they can tell which part of the brain is working because of the electromagnetic waves coming out of somebody's home. And what that van or what that thermal beam can do is they can tune in to the exact frequencies of somebody's brain, and from there shift the brain frequencies. And it sounds like a lot, but you'd be surprised at how easy it is for these people to do. That can be easily done. That's been done to me. That's been done to my neighbors. It's been done to God knows how many people that have either been victims of this or perpetrators of this. Your behavior can be easily influenced by these frequencies. And then you've got sonic weapons that can affect different parts of your body. Do you understand what I mean? And none of this is new. Like, all what I'm talking about with regards to these technologies, it goes back to the 70s at least. what I'm talking about, okay? What I'm talking about is, it goes back to the 70s, at least, these technologies that are being used on people. Do you understand what I'm saying? And they can use it for any situation. And it's getting to a point now where there don't even need to be vans outside your house. They've got all kinds of satellites in the sky. The way that these weapons work nowadays, it's similar to how Google works or something like that. There doesn't need to be a van outside your house. There really doesn't. It still happens, but it's not needed. It's not needed. Do you understand what I'm saying? And if you don't believe me about directed energy weapons, go and look online about something called Dragonfire. Our government over here in the UK has developed a new weapon called Dragonfire, apparently to be used against the Russians. But these weapons have been in development for a long, long time, and countries have already been buying and using them against members of the public, because these things have got to be tested. They've got to be tested. These are billions of dollars worth of weapons now. These things have got to be tested. And if you have a small group of people who are already marginalized due to mental health issues, due to lack of social skills, if you have people who are already marginalized, then these people are the easiest types of people to actually experiment on when it comes to these weapons. And Danielle Aoka had a military boyfriend, and she believed in astrology. She was ripe for the picking. Ripe for the fucking picking, if you ask me. Ripe for the fucking picking. But this is just alleged, all right? This is alleged. This is my theories from an outsider looking in. That's all this is. But you ain't about to tell me that our governments did not plan this shit. They knew an eclipse was coming. They knew human beings would be superstitious about this shit. Get involved in things that they shouldn't get involved in. Put out information that they shouldn't put out. They knew human beings would do this. They knew human beings would look at the eclipse and go crazy. And if you think that the powers that be don't follow astrology, you're naive. They follow it. It's just that they follow older astrological patterns than we're familiar with. They follow older calendars that we're familiar with. The Rothschilds used the Julian calendar rather than this current one, which is actually more accurate, but it's more recent. Powerful people work with older forms of divination. When it comes to the metaphysical stuff, they work with older stuff. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, if you think they're not using Vedic astrology, you're naive. If you think they're not using the Julian calendar, you're naive. They use these things. And they plan false flags accordingly. The CIA have a whole... I think they had something called projects... Hang on. 1 second. The CIA had a whole project when it came to psychics. I think I've got a book on it, actually. I'm trying to look for the book here. Psychic Warrior, yeah. So the CIA had a whole... I haven't read this book yet. But, they had a whole department called... I think it was... Hang on. Yeah, it was a program called Stargate. It was a program called Stargate, and it was using... it was using spirituality, clairvoyance, all that shit. Stargate, CIA. They know. If you think they don't use astrology, you're dumb. You're fucking dumb. There's a reason why among the public, astrology is kept separate from astronomy. Astronomy is kept separate from this, kept separate from that. There's a reason why metaphysics and conventional science are kept separate from one another. It's to keep people confused and to keep people not understanding the truth. These things are separated from one another so that we cannot see how more powerful people or more knowledgeable people are manipulating the rest of us. This is what they fucking do. And again, anything that is older, practiced by the masses, like astrology, like magic or spirituality or any of that, anything that's older than Christianity, that's practiced by the public, is going to be demonized as anti-scientific, as not knowledgeable, not sensible, all the rest of it, psychotic even. There's a plan to all of it. There's a plan to all of it. All of these things are diagnosed as psychotic, mentally ill for a reason. Anybody in the masses who is practicing anything older than the science that we're taught in schools, anything older than that, is seen as illogical and unscientific. When really science and cause and effect are one and the same thing. It's just that they're explaining different parts of the same thing, or explaining it in different ways. That's all. But they're kept separate for a reason. It's so that people more powerful than us can use it to lead the rest of us and control the rest of us. That's why I said people really need to be careful around the eclipse and to chill out a little bit. I said that on one of my statuses on Empress Justice Tarot. Chill the fuck out when it comes to the eclipse. Not only because of the astrological alignments, but because of the false flags that can be created from this event. It is important. And, I'm going to lose followers. I know I'm going to lose followers. I don't care. The truth is the fucking truth. There are people being killed because of the weapons that I've been talking about. Because of the psychotronic weapons and the directed energy weapons and the electromagnetic frequency weapons and the acoustic weaponry. People are being killed off this. They've already been killed off this. It will continue. So at this point, I don't care what people think. If they want to leave, they can leave. I want customers, I want people in my corner who understand the truth or are not afraid of it. So if people want to leave, they can. Do you understand what I'm saying? And all this information I got from an expert. I got from an expert who was who's ex-MI5, ex-Navy. I got my information from them. Do you understand what I mean? So, yeah, that's my opinion of the whole situation. That's actually my opinion of the whole situation. My opinion is that everything that happened with Danielle Johnson was a psyop. And it was a psyop that unfortunately got 3 people killed and one poor little girl without a family. That's my opinion of what happened. And I've seen it before. And it's horrible. And I wish it wasn't the case. I really wish it wasn't. But the truth of the matter is that there've been so many breakthroughs with the brain and the nervous system. So much experimentation that has happened with, brain frequencies and brain patterns. It's just this. Even certain, well, if you know, you know. There are certain names that have been dealt out in accordance with, I don't know. There are certain names given to things that are also given to the names of brainwaves. I'll leave you to work out what I'm talking about. It's done for a reason. And people are, like I said, our governments are playing in our faces, and you're letting them play in your face. And by the time you're ready to do something, it's going to be too late. It's going to be too late to do anything worth a damn. It's already too late. And people still don't believe us. And I don't normally put stuff like this on my tarot channel, but I really feel like it's important for people to understand spirituality is being manipulated. in order to, in order to get people killed. And in order to demonize anybody that could even come close to exposing the truth about what our governments have been doing to all of us. Now, I didn't explain myself very well, but you can do what you will with this information. You can do what you will with this information. And I'm just going to leave it here. But my condolences go to Danielle Johnson's daughter. And I'm sorry for that beautiful 8-month-old baby that was also killed. My condolences go out to Danielle Johnson's family. For anybody who survived her. For anybody who survived her partner. My condolences are with you guys. I know there are those of you out there who really cared about them. And I'm truly sorry that this happened. And please understand that when I make this live, I am not doing so to disrespect you or your family. But there are sinister things going on that need to be exposed, and truth be told, those things are not metaphysical. Nor are they simply mental health issues, because unfortunately, as much as I hate to say this, mental illness can also be synthesized by everything that I've talked about today. And there are major companies invested in defense systems that have a vested interest in covering up what's going on. So please believe it. I mean this with no malice, but I have experience in these things, and unfortunately I have insider information as well. So these things need to be spoken to save the lives of other people as well, so that they can protect themselves. Anyway, I've been Empress Justice. So peace and blessings to all of you out there. I love you guys so much. For those of you who are still with me, please stay tuned for the first quarter moon in Purvavasu in Cancer. We'll talk then. Okay, I love you guys. Peace and blessings. Bye-bye.